Wesley Evans never thought he'd have to go undercover in his own cafe chain, but when sales at one of his locations kept dipping and customer complaints started piling up, he knew something was wrong. Reports from his district manager, Dave, were vague short staffing, slow service, the usual excuses. But Wesley wasn't buying it. This cafe was in a prime location, had a solid customer base, and there was no reason for it to be struggling. The business had been in his family for over 30 years, passed down from his father, who built it from a small neighborhood cafe into a chain of 7 locations. Wesley had spent years modernizing the brand, expanding its menu, and ensuring they kept the family-friendly, welcoming atmosphere his father had always valued. But as the company grew, he became more focused on strategy and less involved in day-to-day operations. Maybe that was a mistake. So he decided to go undercover. Wesley transformed his appearance, completely growing out his beard, dyeing his graying hair a darker brown, and wearing thick, rimmed glasses. He donned an old hoodie and faded jeans, looking every bit like a quiet, out-of-work, middle-aged man. Since store employees only saw him in corporate meetings or on the company website, there was no chance they'd recognize him in person. He entered the cafe late in the afternoon when the rush had died down. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but something felt off immediately. The energy was dull. There was no friendly chatter between employees and customers. Instead, the staff looked either stressed or completely disinterested. Wesley got in line behind an elderly man fumbling with his wallet at the register. The man pulled out a handful of coins, slowly counting them onto the counter. "I'm sorry, dear," the elderly man said softly. "I don't have my card with me today. I hope this is okay." The barista, a tall young man with a name tag that read Tyler, rolled his eyes dramatically. "Are you kidding me?" he scoffed. "You're really paying in coins." The old man hesitated, his hands shaking slightly. "It's just a small coffee," he said. "I think it's enough." Tyler exhaled sharply, looking around as if expecting someone to back him up. "This isn't a vending machine, man." "You're holding up the line." Wesley felt his stomach drop. His father had built this cafe to be a place where everyone felt welcome. Seeing an employee mock an elderly customer for something as simple as paying in coins made his blood boil. The old man started to scoop the coins back into his pocket, his face red with embarrassment. "I don't want to cause trouble. I'll just—" "No, sir, you're fine," a different voice said. A young woman with dark curls, wearing the same barista uniform, stepped up beside Tyler. Her name tag read Maria. "I'll count it for you." She ignored Tyler's irritated glare and patiently counted out the coins, smiling at the customer. "You have more than enough," she assured him. "And next time, don't worry about it." "We're happy to serve you." Wesley watched as the elderly man gave her a grateful smile, but Tyler wasn't done. Maria handed the man his coffee and turned back toward Tyler. "You didn't have to do that," he muttered under his breath. "Do what?" Maria shot back, keeping her voice low but firm. "Encourage that. Now people are gonna think they can just dump a pile of quarters on the counter every time." Wesley clenched his jaw. The way Tyler spoke, the sheer disrespect in his voice, made it clear this wasn't a one-time thing. How many other customers had been treated like this? How many people had walked out feeling unwelcome in a cafe that was supposed to be built on kindness and respect? Wesley stepped forward in line, still playing the role of an ordinary customer. He kept his voice even. "Is there a problem with paying in coins?" Tyler sighed. "Look, man, it's just annoying, all right, slows everything down." Maria shot him a sharp look. "It takes, what, an extra 30 seconds? You don't know people's situations. Maybe that's all they have." Tyler shrugged, clearly uninterested in the argument. "Whatever." Wesley knew he had to keep his cover a little longer, had to see more before revealing himself. But his gut was already telling him what he needed to do. He ordered a black coffee and took a seat near the counter, watching everything carefully. Maria was polite and efficient, greeting every customer with a smile despite Tyler's clear attitude problem. A few other employees worked in the background, some moving quickly, others dragging their feet like they wanted to be anywhere else. The cafe itself looked decent, but there were signs of neglect. The napkin dispensers were empty at several tables. A few chairs had crumbs on them, and the trash can near the door was overflowing. These were the details that added up to a bad customer experience. As he sipped his coffee, Wesley listened closely to the conversations happening behind the counter. "I don't even know why you care so much," Tyler said to Maria as they worked. "You think corporate gives a crap about these people?" Maria wiped down the espresso machine, her jaw tight. "I care because it's the right thing to do, and corporate is supposed to care. That's the whole brand, right?" Tyler snorted. "Yeah, well, corporate isn't here, and the manager doesn't care either. This place is a joke." Wesley's stomach turned. The manager doesn't care. That explained a lot. If leadership was indifferent, no wonder employees like Tyler felt they could get away with being rude. Wesley had seen enough for today. He finished his coffee, stood up, and walked out without another word, but he wasn't done. This cafe was his family's legacy. And now, he was going to fix it from the inside out. The next morning, Wesley arrived at the cafe earlier than before, dressed in the same worn hoodie and jeans. This time, he was applying for a job. He had already arranged for a fake identity through a trusted friend in HR Lucas Foster, a man with retail experience but no background in food service. It was the perfect cover to start at the bottom and see how things truly operated from the inside. The moment he stepped inside, he noticed that the atmosphere hadn't improved overnight. The cafe lacked the warmth it was supposed to have. The music playing from the speakers was too quiet, employees moved sluggishly, and customers seemed more like an inconvenience than welcomed guests. Behind the counter, the manager, a stocky man with thinning hair named Greg, was hunched over his phone, barely acknowledging anyone. Wesley approached, hands in his pockets, playing the role of an eager but slightly nervous applicant. Greg barely looked up. "Yeah, I'm here about the job posting. Barista position." Greg exhaled sharply as if this were an annoyance rather than part of his job. He glanced toward the back and shouted for someone to come out. A woman in her late 20s emerged from the stockroom, wiping her hands on her apron. "Maria, take care of this," Greg grumbled before returning to his phone. Maria looked surprised but nodded, leading Wesley to a small table near the back. She pulled out a crumpled application form from under the counter and handed him a pen. He filled it out quickly, making sure to keep his handwriting slightly different from his usual neat script. Maria glanced over the form, then leaned forward slightly. "So why here?" Wesley shrugged, keeping his voice casual. "Needed a job." "Figured a cafe would be a decent place to work." She studied him. "Ever worked in food service? Retail, mostly, but I can learn fast." Maria gave a small nod. "Honestly, if you're even a little reliable, you're already better than half the people here." Wesley raised an eyebrow. "That bad?" She hesitated, then sighed. "Greg doesn't care. Tyler runs his mouth more than he works, and corporate, I don't even know if they pay attention to this place anymore." Wesley kept his expression neutral. "How long have you been here?" "Almost a year. At first it was all right. But lately it's been getting worse. No leadership, no accountability. Customers get treated like they're a problem, and if you actually try to do things right, you're the odd one out." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "You sure you want to work here?" Wesley gave a small chuckle. "I don't mind a challenge." Maria studied him again, then stood up. "All right, you're hired. Not that Greg cares enough to say it himself." Greg barely acknowledged Wesley when Maria told him the new hire was ready to start. He just waved a hand dismissively and muttered, "Show him the ropes." Maria led Wesley behind the counter, handing him an apron. "All right, let's see what you can do." She walked him through the basics, how to operate the espresso machine where the supplies were stored, and how to handle orders. Wesley listened carefully, making sure to act like someone genuinely learning for the first time. It wasn't long before Tyler appeared, his expression already laced with irritation. "So, you're the new guy," Tyler muttered, barely looking away from his phone. Wesley nodded. Yeah. Lucas? Great, Tyler said flatly. Just don't slow me down. Maria exhaled sharply. Or you could actually help train him instead of standing there. Tyler scoffed. Not my job. Maria ignored him and continued showing Wesley how to prepare drinks. Customers trickled in, and Wesley paid close attention to how they were treated. Maria was patient and efficient, always greeting people with warmth. Tyler, on the other hand, barely looked at customers, tossing drinks onto the counter without a word. At one point, a woman with a stroller ordered a cappuccino. As she struggled to dig through her bag for her wallet, her toddler whined loudly. Tyler groaned under his breath. Great, more chaos. Maria shot him a sharp look, but before she could say anything, Wesley stepped in. I got it, he said smoothly, handing the woman her drink with a reassuring nod. She smiled gratefully. Thank you, Tyler huffed. Man, you're really trying too hard. Wesley turned slightly. Or maybe you're not trying at all. Tyler gave him a long look, then smirked. All right, new guy. Let's see how long you last. As the hours passed, Wesley took note of the deeper issues in the cafe. Greg barely left his spot at the back, only showing up when he needed to grab something. He never checked on staff, never interacted with customers. Tyler acted like the cafe was his personal playground, doing the bare minimum and mocking anyone who put in real effort. But there was something else Wesley noticed. Maria was holding everything together. She picked up slack, dealt with customers with patience, and even cleaned up after others without being asked. By the end of the shift, Wesley had seen enough to confirm what he already suspected. The cafe wasn't failing because of the location or the business itself. It was failing because of leadership, or rather, the complete lack of it. As he untied his apron, Maria leaned against the counter watching him. So, what do you think? Wesley wiped his hands on a napkin. I think this place could be a lot better if people actually cared. Maria gave a small, knowing smile. Yeah, but that starts at the top, doesn't it? Wesley met her gaze, his mind already working through his next move. Tomorrow he'd push further. And soon, everyone would see exactly who had been watching all along. Wesley arrived at the cafe early the next morning, blending in with the other employees filing in for their shifts. The air inside was thick with the lingering scent of yesterday's brewed coffee, but the atmosphere was unchanged, dull, almost mechanical. Employees moved sluggishly, exchanging half-hearted greetings, and Greg, as expected, was nowhere in sight. Maria was already behind the counter, tying her apron as she glanced up. You came back, she said, not quite surprised but mildly curious. Figured I'd give it another shot, Wesley replied, rolling up his sleeves. Maria handed him a rag. Then you can start by wiping down the tables. No one did it last night. He took the rag without hesitation and started cleaning each surface, noting the dried coffee rings and crumbs that had been left behind. If this was the standard, it wasn't just the customer service that had slipped, it was basic upkeep. As he worked, Greg finally emerged from the back, stretching and yawning as if he'd just woken up. He barely glanced at the employees already moving behind the counter before heading straight for the coffee machine and pouring himself a cup. Maria caught Wesley's eye briefly, saying nothing, but the message was clear. This was normal. Greg leaned against the counter, sipping his coffee as if he were a customer instead of the manager. All right, let's not be slow today, he muttered, though his tone lacked any real authority. Tyler walked in a few minutes later, his uniform wrinkled and his phone in hand. He barely acknowledged anyone as he slid behind the counter, shoving past Maria to get to the register. Glad to see you're full of enthusiasm, Maria said dryly. Tyler let out a breath. It's too early for this. Wesley finished wiping down the last table and returned to the counter as the morning rush began. Customers streamed in steadily, most ordering their usual drinks without much conversation. Wesley focused on preparing orders, keeping his movements efficient but careful. Then, a rush of activity near the entrance caught his attention. A woman with a flustered expression entered, balancing a laptop bag and a cup carrier from another cafe. She approached the counter, setting her things down with a sigh. "I ordered ahead through the app, but no one confirmed it," she said, glancing at her phone. Tyler barely looked up. "Yeah, we don't really check that," the woman frowned. "Isn't that the point of ordering ahead?" Tyler shrugged. "I mean, we'll make it now, but you could have just ordered here." Maria turned toward the espresso machine, already preparing the drink without a word. Wesley, watching closely, saw the frustration in the woman's eyes. "That kind of defeats the purpose," she muttered. Tyler exhaled, tapping the register screen lazily. "Look, we're busy, just chill." The woman's expression tightened, but she didn't argue. Wesley, however, had seen enough. He stepped forward, keeping his voice even. "We appreciate your patience. Your drink's being made now." The woman gave him a grateful nod, but Tyler shot him an unimpressed look. "You don't have to jump in every time," Tyler muttered under his breath. Wesley didn't respond. He didn't need to. As the morning rush continued, he observed more of the same patterns. Maria handled the bulk of the work. Greg remained in the background, and Tyler's attitude fluctuated between disinterest and outright dismissiveness. Then, just before the rush died down, an older woman with a cane approached the counter slowly. She adjusted her glasses as she peered up at the menu. "Could I get a small tea, please?" she asked. Maria smiled. "Of course. Would you like honey or lemon with that?" The woman hesitated, feeling around in her purse. "Just honey, thank you," Tyler sighed audibly. "Cash or card?" The woman pulled out a small coin purse, her fingers trembling slightly as she counted out bills. Tyler glanced at the money, then at her. "This is short." The woman's face fell. "Oh, I thought I had enough." Wesley watched as Tyler shifted, clearly unimpressed. "Well, I can't just give it to you." Before anyone could say anything, Maria reached into her own pocket, pulling out $1 and sliding it into the register. "It's covered." The woman looked up in surprise. "Oh dear, you don't have to," Maria shook her head with a smile. "It's no problem at all." Tyler scowled, but before he could say anything, Greg finally decided to speak. "This isn't a charity," Greg muttered. Maria stiffened slightly. "It's $1." Greg took a slow sip of his coffee. "That's not the point." Wesley wiped his hands on a napkin, stepping forward. "I think it is the point," he said, his voice calm but firm. Greg turned toward him for the first time that day. "And who are you to say that?" Wesley held his gaze for a moment before reaching up and pulling off his glasses. Then he ran a hand through his hair, shaking it slightly back into its natural style. The small changes to his appearance were enough. Maria's eyes widened slightly. She recognized him first. Greg frowned, looking at him more closely. Then his face changed, shifting from mild irritation to a visible panic. Tyler, still clueless, scoffed. "What, you finally deciding to quit or something?" Wesley looked at him evenly. "No. I'm deciding to fix my cafe." Silence fell over the space. Customers turned their heads slightly, sensing the tension, though no one spoke. Maria inhaled slowly, realization settling in. Greg cleared his throat, setting his coffee down. "Sir, Wesley cut him off. "Save it." He turned toward Maria. "Walk with me." She hesitated, then untied her apron and stepped out from behind the counter. Wesley gestured for her to follow as he walked toward the seating area. Greg and Tyler remained frozen, both clearly processing what had just happened. Wesley glanced at Maria as they reached the far side of the cafe. "I owe you an apology." Maria blinked. "For what?" "For letting this place get this bad." She looked at him for a long moment, then exhaled. "I figured corporate didn't care, but you do, don't you?" Wesley nodded. "I built this company with my father. This place is supposed to be more than just another cafe." Maria crossed her arms. "Then what are you going to do about it?" Wesley turned his gaze toward the counter, where Greg and Tyler stood awkwardly, their confidence visibly shaken. "Everything," he said. Greg's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. Tyler shifted his weight, glancing between Wesley and Maria like he was waiting for someone to break the silence. Wesley wasn't going to waste time on dramatic speeches. He had seen enough. He turned to Greg first, his tone steady. "You're done here." Greg's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. His face was pale. "Sir, there's no explanation that'll change my mind," Wesley said. "I've watched you sit back and let this place fall apart. You don't lead. You don't manage, you don't even care, and that's exactly why this cafe is failing." Greg's lips pressed together. His gaze darted to Tyler as if expecting him to speak up, but Tyler looked just as unsure. Wesley continued. "You can collect your things now, or I can have security escort you out by the end of the day. Either way, you're not managing this cafe anymore." Greg's entire posture changed. The arrogance, the indifference, it all vanished in a single breath. He muttered something under his breath, then turned abruptly and walked toward the back office, yanking the door open with more force than necessary. Tyler let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. "Wow, that's how you run things. Just fire people on the spot." Wesley's gaze snapped to him. "You think I don't see what you've been doing?" Wesley asked, his voice calm but cutting. "I watched you insult customers, ignore your responsibilities, and treat your coworkers like they're beneath you." Tyler scoffed. "I was just being real." "People come in here acting entitled," Wesley repeated. "You work in hospitality. Your job is to serve people with respect, no matter how they pay or how long they take. If that's too much for you, you shouldn't be in this business." Tyler rolled his eyes, but there was no confidence behind it anymore. "You have two choices," Wesley said. "You can leave now, or you can prove that you actually deserve this job. But that means changing everything about how you work here." Tyler hesitated, his jaw tightening. He glanced at Maria, who met his gaze with no sympathy. Wesley gave him a few seconds before speaking again. "Make your decision." Tyler exhaled sharply. "Fine. I'll do better." "We'll see," Wesley said, "because if I hear one more complaint about you mistreating customers or slacking off, you won't get another warning." Tyler gave a short nod, his posture stiff. He didn't argue. Wesley turned back to Maria. "You're the only reason this cafe hasn't completely fallen apart." Maria's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, surprise, maybe. "I need a new manager here," Wesley said. "Someone who actually cares about the customers and the staff." Maria blinked. "You're offering me the job." "You're already doing half of it," Wesley said. "Might as well be paid for it." Maria studied him carefully, as if searching for any sign that this was some kind of test. "I don't want to be stuck cleaning up everyone's messes without real authority," she said. "You won't be," Wesley replied. "I'll make sure of it." Maria crossed her arms, thinking for a long moment. Then finally she nodded. "All right, I'll do it." Wesley extended a hand. Maria shook it firmly. With that settled, Wesley turned toward the rest of the cafe. Customers had been watching, some more obviously than others. A few exchanged glances, murmuring to each other. He addressed the employees. "Things are going to change here. We're bringing this cafe back to what it was meant to be." There was no applause, no grand reaction. But Wesley didn't need one. The real work was just beginning. Wesley stepped behind the counter, rolling up his sleeves. The cafe still had customers waiting, and despite the shake-up, business had to continue. Maria was already adjusting to her new role, moving with renewed purpose. She called out drink orders, checked on supplies, and made sure the remaining employees stayed focused. Tyler, for his part, kept his head down. He worked without his usual sarcasm, though his movements were stiff. Wesley noticed him glancing toward Maria more than once, measuring how much authority she now had. Greg had left quickly, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The tension he usually carried with him had lifted, and the cafe already felt different. Employees moved with more energy, the usual sluggishness replaced with something closer to engagement. Wesley focused on the immediate problems first. He checked the espresso machine, ran inventory on the milk and syrups, and made a mental note of what needed restocking. Maria caught on immediately, nodding when she saw what he was doing. By the time the morning rush tapered off, the pace finally slowed. Wesley took a moment to lean against the counter, watching the employees settle into a steadier rhythm. Maria approached him with a clipboard, glancing at the supply list he had started. She tapped her pen against the edge of the board. "We're running low on the dark roast beans," she said. "I put in the order last week, but it hasn't come in yet." Wesley frowned. "Who was handling orders before?" She exhaled through her nose. "Greg, and he barely did it. Half the time we ran out of things and had to make do." Wesley nodded. That explained why certain menu items had been inconsistently available. He made a note to follow up with the supplier himself. Maria scanned the cafe, watching the employees work. "You're going to replace Greg with someone permanent eventually, right?" Wesley folded his arms. "If you're asking whether I plan on bringing in someone over you know. You're in charge here now." She processed that for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Good." Tyler finished washing a blender and wiped his hands on a towel. He hesitated before walking over. "So, what happens now?" Wesley met his gaze. "That depends on you." Tyler shifted, clearly uneasy. "Look, I get that I wasn't exactly helpful before, but I didn't think it mattered. Greg didn't care and the customers," he caught himself, then exhaled. "I didn't think they noticed." Maria scoffed. "They noticed." Tyler rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, I figured." Wesley didn't ease up. "You have a choice. You either step up and be part of the solution or you walk away, but if you stay, you treat customers with respect. No more excuses." Tyler hesitated, then gave a small nod. "All right." Maria raised an eyebrow. "That's it," Tyler sighed. "What do you want me to say?" "I screwed up, I get it." Wesley studied him for a moment. "Then show it." Tyler nodded again, this time more firmly. The rest of the day continued with noticeable improvements. Maria took charge immediately, delegating tasks and keeping employees accountable. Wesley observed the staff taking their responsibilities more seriously, and even Tyler refrained from making snide remarks. When the afternoon lull arrived, Wesley pulled Maria aside. "You'll need a proper transition plan," he said. "I'll have corporate support you with training, but the day-to-day is yours now." Maria crossed her arms. "What about the hiring gaps? We're still short-staffed." "I'll authorize temporary raises for overtime while we bring in new hires," Wesley said. "And I want you involved in the hiring process. You know what this place needs better than anyone." Maria's expression softened slightly. "You're actually letting me make decisions?" Wesley gave a small nod. "That's what leadership is," she exhaled, shaking her head slightly. "All right. Then let's do this right." By closing time, the cafe already felt different. Employees left with less tension in their shoulders, and the space itself seemed lighter. Wesley knew there was still work to do, but this was the first real step in fixing what had been broken. As he locked up, Maria stood beside him, arms crossed. "You're not just going to disappear back to corporate, are you?" she asked. Wesley shook his head. "No, I'll be around." She nodded, satisfied. Without another word, she turned and headed toward her car. Wesley watched her go, then glanced back at the cafe one more time. Tomorrow, the real rebuilding would begin.